Okay, merci.
Sen bu presentation ya clique gel.
Non, non, je t'aime. Tout le Uh, good day. Good day, people. Uh, the class is supposed to start at 12 o'clock. So I'm just sitting here waiting for all of you to join me on this class. So at 12, the class will begin. So it's only 9 minutes. I'm waiting for more people to attend. The more the merrier, actually. So the more people attend, the happier I will be. We have 35 likes and 28 students that are online. My name is Pumelele Hadebe. I'm a facilitator at Lusitech from Afraid campus. So today I'm going to be doing with you the hazard identification and risk assessment. So this is my favorite. This is my favorite topic on on occupational health and safety. So why does hazard and why does HIRA falls under the why does it falls under occupational health and safety? So now, firstly, maybe we should just look at what is occupational health and safety, because some people actually are learning because they are free courses at Lucitech. So you should be studying something that you know. So the occupational health and safety. So for my students to I understand it. So usually I break it down into word by word. Remember, it is occupational health and safety. So I start by analyzing the word occupation. Then what is occupational? What is occupation? What is those occupation? So we know that occupation, it refers to someone's job or someone's profession. For instance, my name is Pumelele Hadebe. I'm the facilitator, so that is my occupation. Now, and then when we come to health, so health, you should be able to determine when someone is healthy, when you say someone is healthy, not just with my physique that you see me smiling and then you assume that I'm happy. It should also involve mental as well, not just physical. So it's physical and mental as well. So psychologically, I need to be okay. So in safety, we all usually say when we are walking on front of the police station or there is a police van. So we all automatically feel safe because we know that those people are going to protect you. They're going to protect us. So there is no need to be afraid when we are walking beside them. So according to the workplaces, so safety, it means the state of being protected from harm. So you are safety, you are protected from harm, you are protected from hazards. So that is healthy. So the occupational health and safety, it is very crucial, it is very crucial for protecting the workers' well-being. So we protect the workers' well-being. Well, not just the workers' well-being, but for the clients as well, for the customers as well. We should make sure that they all feel safe whenever they are coming to purchase something to this shop. So we should make them feel safe. So other shops have securities at the door, so you know that you are safe when you enter at Pick and Pay. You are safe when you enter at Shoprite. So that is where most of the people will go, where they feel safe. Now, so this occupational health and safety thing, it involves identifying the hazards, assessing the risk, and implementing the measures to prevent the injuries and the illnesses. So, in terms of hazards, guys, in terms of hazards, yesterday we did talk about hazards. So, we know and we have seen the hazards, like hazards are everywhere. So, to define the hazard, um, so when we are defining the hazard, I will just say hazard, it is anything that has the potential to cause harm. So today we are going to learn how does these hazards relates to risk, but bear in mind that everything that is around you, even a person, is a hazard, but we can control those hazards. There are certain environments where we can control those environments. For example, you take a younger child to, let's say you are a teacher by occupation, so you take the child to school. It's a kindergarten school, so obviously they teach from grade R to grade, maybe grade five. So the people who are learning here, the small people who are learning here, are people at his or her age group. So you know that no, nothing is going to happen because this place is child friendly. You see, kids are learning here and they are always good every day. So there's nothing that is going to happen to them. Also, for instance, if you take your child to minery, you're working at a mining, now you take your child there, what is going to happen? Is the child going to be safe? No, the child will not be safe because other workplaces are not friendly. So your child will never be safe. Now, let us come to HIRA. I want us to look at this word, a HIRA. So it's hazard identification and risk assessment. So already, I already mentioned that we are supposed to identify the hazard, and I explained what are the hazards. Now, I want us to learn about, so it is the hazard, they vary. We have so many types of hazards. So for us to understand this course well, we have to start by going back to hazards and look at those hazards. So since we say we identify the hazards, okay. So in those hazards, number one, we have what you call the physical hazards. So the physical hazards are, it's the temperature. We can say it's the temperature. Remember, if you are working in a scorching hot sun, you cannot perform other tasks because you are at the risk of fainting. You see, so you cannot function. Also, you can have heat stress and hypothermia. So there are many things that you can suffer from in terms of the heat. And then the machinery and equipment. So remember, back in the days, the people who were working in the forest, so they were using the hand saws to cut the woods. So they were using and the axe. So they were using so much energy coming out from them. And then who someone who is an engineer or a safety officer decided to say, now we have something that we call the power tools. So these are hand tools. All those tools on the toolbox that we usually use at home, those are the hand tools. So now, if we are going to use the if you are going to use the grinder to cut down the logs, we can we can improve our production maybe by 100%. Because let's say by using the wood saw, they were only able to produce maybe 10 woods per day, but now they are using the new machinery, the grinder. So it uses, maybe they can cut down hundreds a day. So you see, there is an improvement. So there is no employer who can say no to the suggestion. So those machines, they are hazards because you can see how the grinder operates with the electricity. And the grinder, it is very sharp and it is very fast. When it cuts you, it makes sure that it leaves the hand down, so you have no limbs. So many people who are working there, they suffer from that. They do not have fingers, their fingers are cut by the grinder. So we should avoid those hazards. We check those hazards that the cuts, the crashes, all those things caused by our machinery and equipment at work. And then falls. So when someone trip, slip, and fall, so those are also types of hazards which are physical hazards. Or falling from heights, guys. Let's say you were using the step ladder. Okay, sometimes it is determined the height that you are going to work with. It is usually determined by the job you are also going to perform. So if I am going to work at height, I'm going to wash windows of a double story. I should not be using the step ladder because I'm a lady first, and I'm probably not trained to use the harness. So they should probably just put me on a scaffold or the elevating platforms. And okay, the noise. So the noise is also part of physical hazards. When the time goes, we'll find out that okay, you are a welder or you are a boiler maker. So you work with a lot of noise. You work with you work with a lot of noise. Also, the boiler makers and the welders, they usually wear the goggles because at some point their eyes, even wearing those goggles, their eyes, they also suffer from physical hazards. So we are trying by all means every day in terms of safety to develop things that are going to help us accordingly. Now, in terms of noise, you might work, okay, you might work wherever you are working and it will not affect you now. But in the long run, you can see that now I haven't even reached 30, but I'm having hearing problem. It is because of those sounds that are usually happening at work. So they are affecting me. Now, let's come to the chemical hazards, guys. So we have so many types of hazards. So we will just look at those that are very important. So we have chemical hazards. So the chemical hazards, when we think of chemicals, guys, we know the chemicals. We think of flammable materials. We think of fire. We think of explosion. We think of petrol. We think of all those things that are toxic to when they have contact our skin or our eyes. So in chemical hazard, we have toxic substances. For example, poisoning. So when they have poisoned you, so you have it means you have consumed what the toxic substance and respiratory problems. So people who are working in construction, who are building projects, so they always make sure that they wear the face mask because their respiratory problems affect them. So those are types of chemical hazards. Okay, we come to flammable materials. So in terms of flammable materials, we think of fires, we think of explosions. So those are chemical hazards. So how you check how would they affect a person? How does a person who manufacture people who manufacture petrol, spirits, all those toxic substances, how do they survive? How do they survive? So they survive because we make sure that they have proper PPE. Okay? And then we should come to corrosive substances. So, well, I don't know where did the elders from home learned it. Whenever maybe a liquid soap or whatever soap got into your eye by the mistake, so they use water to flush it down. Of which it is also it is a correct measure of trying to of trying to make sure that the person is okay until they get the medical help. So those things that damage the eyes, that damage the skins, are chemical hazards. And then we have reactive chemicals, for example, the explosions and toxic releases. So we know all about these those companies that have big or shimmers outside. So they release toxic substances in the air. All right, which is harmful for our health. Now, let us come to the biological hazards. So, when we talk about biological hazards, I'm sure most of people who have done the biology in high school, who have done physical sciences, they know what life sciences. I mean, so they know what actually come into their mind when we speak of biological hazards. So it is where we are speaking of infectious diseases. For example, tuberculosis. So if someone has a TB here at Lusotec, so we should be aware that we have someone with a TB, so that person must isolate themselves, or we all wear proper mask to avoid getting infected. Also, COVID-19. So we all experienced this COVID-19 thing. So it's part of biological hazards. So how did they control the biological hazard of which is COVID-19? Remember, we were they said we should lock down, we should isolate ourselves. Those who were infected, they were put on isolation so that they will not infect other people. Also, there was a national lockdown. There was so many things done in order to make sure that we do not infect each other. They even got us used to use the sanitizers, the face mask, the face shield, all those things we did not know that they literally exist. So we ended up using them. So the COVID, the TB, the HIV is one of the examples of biological hazards. Also allergies. Allergies, we know the allergies. If For example, they always say you do not take medication that is not prescribed by a practitioner for you. You cannot say, Ish, I have a headache. Can I have some pills for, because we do not know if you are allergic on them or you are not. And then we have biological agents. So, in terms of biological agents, we are speaking of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. So those things we all know that the first thing when you are having, let's say you're a first aider, so you are having contact with a patient with a bacteria or virus, make sure that you wear your gloves, you wash your hands after you've done treating that patient, and sanitize, because when there are bacteria or viruses, sometimes there's even blood. So we make sure that we sanitize, we do all those precautions to make sure we are not contaminated as well. Okay, now let's come to type of hazard number 4. We have economic hazards, which are also called musculoskeletal hazards. So those economic hazards or musculoskeletal hazards, they are caused by repetitive movement. Okay, for example, a bus driver, a truck driver, usually in the long run, they all complain about one and the same thing. They complain about the kidneys, they complain about the endless back pains, of which is caused by sitting here, not moving. Also, people who are working in the offices, they also suffer from economic hazards, because now I'm always I'm always sitting here, so my posture is not good. So it's poor posture. So I will have the back pain if the chair is not comfortable enough. So those are the economic hazards. Also doing manual work like building the bricks. So since you are going up and down, you're doing one thing for the whole day. So obviously you will suffer from economic hazards. Now, let us come to psychological hazards. So, what are the psychological hazards, guys? When you speak of psychology, psychological, what comes in mind, what literally comes in mind if you say we have psychological hazards? So, psychological hazards, first thing that should come in your mind that here they mean anything that has the potential to damage your mind psychologically. You can even end up crazy. You can even end up getting a mad, being a mad woman or a madman because of the psychological hazards. So it is important to learn to how to handle those hazards at work. How do you handle the stress and the health stressors at work? So you make sure because the stress is also a type of psychological hazard. So you make sure if I'm having stress, I'm having the deadlines, I cannot prioritize my work. Obviously, I will have stress. So not being able to meet the deadlines and the workload is keep on piling up. Obviously, I will be so stressed. So we need to be able to manage the stress and then number two, the type of psychological hazard, it is violence and aggression. We know that whenever you are stressed, you become irritated. You become irritated. Even little things they irritate you. So those are part of those are part of, of psychological hazards and also the harassment. So it's either it might be sexual or it might be racial. So in terms of sexual, the harassment it comes usually people say we know someone who you can sleep with to get a job at the municipality or at Transnet or at Lusatec or at anywhere. Now you have slept with them. Okay, now it was a fixed term contract. Now you know that how can you not be stressed because now your contract is about to get to an end. So the best way for you to make to renew it, you have to start where you started. So people tend to the sexual harassment that really happens in the workplace, even the racial. If I go to Scotland, since I'm black, obviously I will be they will make sure that they harass me just because of my color, because I'm black and they're all white. So I will not be able to work there. Remember, guys, we spend 90% of our time at work. So now, if you cannot spare that 20%, so if you okay, for myself, I come at Lusatec at 8 o'clock and knock off at 4. So, which means when I get to home, it's almost 6. So I just have to bath, eat, and sleep, wake up, and do the same routine. So you see that here at work, it is supposed to be my second family because I spend most of my time here. So now, if I'm being bullied, if I'm being harassed, so I am not going to be able to cope. Now we have number six, which are called the environmental hazards. So it is where we speak of weather conditions, for example, cold, lightning. So those are the things sometimes we cannot control. I can control the temperature in this room by opening the aircon, but I cannot control the temperature outside. So it is important to learn about environmental hazards of how do they affect us at work. And then so if I have right now I have four lights around me, so at some point that lightning might affect me. And then the ventilation, uh, poor quality air also, it's one of the environmental hazards. Now, how do we manage those hazards? So to manage those hazards, we identify them first, because you cannot manage something that you have not identified. So you identify them first, and then you assess them. That, for example, this is I'm having a Caesar here. So this Caesar is not. I can say it's a hazard, because we said everything is a hazard. So this Caesar is a hazard, but it is manageable. I can manage this. But if we have children playing around with the scissor, so it becomes a risk. So it poses a risk to harm to the babies. But if we are here using this scissor here at Lusatec as adults, as supervised adults, as people who are mentally well, we will know that this thing is going to pose a risk. So, guys, bear in mind that wherever there's a hazard, there's also a risk. So, the risk of me hurting myself with this scissor, the chances are very slim, because I will not put myself in danger with this. But a young child, they can even poke their eyes with it while playing with it. So now you see that for an adult, the scissor is not a risk. But for a child, it is a risk, because the child may poke their eyes and have a serious injury. So that is how we relate the hazard to risk. So we check what kind of the risk will this particular thing pose to me, and then we try to say, since we have kids here, then I guess it's time to use plastic scissors, not this one, because they will hurt themselves, or the kids will not be using the scissors unsupervised. So that is how we assess the risk associated with each others. So the risk and the hazards are related. When there is a hazard, there is a risk. Either it is high, medium, or low. There is always a risk. And then let us come to control. So now, how do we control those hazards? How do we manage and control them? So we have our occupational health and safety control measures. Number one, we try to eliminate the scissor with a plastic scissor and substitute it with a plastic scissor, or we eliminate the scissor at all. We say we are not using the scissors, since we have now a aftercare for kids at Lusatec. So now the scissors, we should throw them away for the safety of the kids. So there was a control measure trying to eliminate this hazard of a scissor. Okay, if we can't, because this thing was bought by money, now how are we going to throw it out with the trash? We can't. So we try to make sure that we keep them and substitute them with the plastic ones. If we cannot substitute with the plastic one, then it is where we sit down and say, these children should not use these scissors unsupervised. So now it's the other control, which is engineering control. So they should always be supervised whenever they are cutting something. Now let us come to administrative controls. So in administrative controls, we say, okay, these kids, they can listen. So since they are 8 years, 6 years, they are not small babies anymore. They can listen to instructions. Now let us train them on how to use the scissor. So we train them. Those are the administrative measures. If they are also failing those measures, now we say, let us give them gloves, which will pose as the PPE. So whenever someone is going to use the scissor, they must be wearing the gloves on the hands. So that is how the control measures are. The PPE is always in the last. Now, after you have done, you sit down, you monitor and review your hazards and risk. You see that those controls that you used, they are working or not. So you always monitor it. If it is happening in that way that you wished to go. So, guys, let us move to the risk assessment. The risk, it is a term that we always use. It is something that we always use. So let me show you my screen. So I'm trying to, what is happening? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So this is the book. It is there available on LMS. So when you go there, you will find this Tech book for hire. So it's HIRA, Occupational Health and Safety Risk Assessment Training. So now we are doing the risk assessment. So now I think we should start by the terminologies. Remember, we are talking about hazard identification and risk assessment. So the more we understand these terms, the better. So a hazard is a condition, activity or object, material or substance that has the ability to cause harm in certain circumstances. So this includes the machinery, the raw material, work method, and a tracer. So, according to Occupational Health and Safety, so they say in Mines Health and Safety Act 29 of 1996, so they define the hazard as a source of exposure or a source of danger. So there is a hazard. Now let us move to risk. Risk is the chance or the likelihood of hazard causing harm or damage to a person or property or the environment. So there is a probability that this might or might not cause harm. So there is a probability that the risk might be negative or might have the negative impact or it might have the positive impact. The extent of risk depends not only on the severity of potential harm to a person, property, or the environment, but also on other factors such as number of people exposed. So this risk it also depend it also so how do you know you need to take care of risk by number one the number of people that this harm intend to cause to. So we know that those people who are exposed to physical or to chemical hazards. So we make sure, usually it's the communities, so we make sure that we know how to take care of them. And then they say the Occupational Health and Safety Act, it defines the risk as the probability that injury or damage will occur. And the mining defines it as the likelihood that the occupational injury or harm to the person will occur. So there is a high possibility, but sometimes the results are negative. Remember, where there is hazard, there is also a risk, but the risk differs. Sometimes it's low, sometimes it's high, sometimes it's extreme. And then we have types of risk. We have pure risk. The pure risks are associated with hazards in spheres such as health, safety, environment, and security, where success with risk control can be removal of the hazard so that the exposure is zero and no harm results. For example, no accident, zero product defects, no crimes, warning and clearing. So the pure risk it is where if we say we are going to have the security patrolling around Friday at night. So we may so that thing will make sure that there is zero crime, there is no crime in the in this town because it is guided 24/7. And then we have the speculative risk. Speculative risk are associated with business, finance, investment, human resource, IT, strategy, and politics, where success is always relative to that of the economy as a whole, the market sector, competitors, and the power attribute of others. So the speculative risk. So we are talking about the real risk here. That if we, for example, if we have floods, those people who have invested, maybe bought land to farm, they did farm, they were waiting for the product to grow. Those people have lost with that risk. So they took a risk knowing that the environmental hazards will are always there and we cannot control them. And then we have the consequences. So the outcome of an event expressed qualitatively or quantitatively being a loss, injury, disadvantage, or gain. So there may be a possible range of outcomes with the so if you are so through that risk, so you know that okay, I know it is risky to breed small cows in summer because it is raining, so they might die because of the bad weather. There are always lightning, it is always floods now and again. So but you take the risk instead. So the consequences might be the gain or might be the loss. So it might happen that this year we are not going to be visited by floods and your cows might grow and your crops might grow. But it might also happen that you have lost, you've lost everything. And then let's talk about the frequency. This is the rate at which an occurrence or an event may occur and is expressed as the number of occurrences of an event in a given time. It is the likelihood of a specified risk leading to a specific outcome or consequences. So the frequency is the rate of which, if this year I was successful to breed and grow crops, nothing did happen. It does not means that it always be the same each year. Sometimes I would lose everything and have to rely on my investment to start again the business. Now we have weight probability. Remember, they said the risk is the probability. So probability is the likelihood of a specific outcome measured by the ratio of specific events or outcomes to the total number of possible events or outcome. Probability is expressed as a number of zero between one. People who did mathematics and mathematics literacy at school, they know everything about the probability. Okay, basically we had maths and maths. So guys, you know what is a probability. It's a scale between 0 to 1. 1 to 0. So it's a probability that something good or not good might happen. The severity, this expresses the degrees of harm or the nature of the consequences. So we would say it is severe because the 100 cars died and all the crops died. So that was a severe degree of harm. Then we have exposure. So exposure, it is the extent or degree to which people, for example, the contractors, visitors, neighbors, customers, actors, or the environment is exposed to a specific risk. So if we are a manufacturing company, we are manufacturing the cigarette, we are manufacturing harmful substances. So we should also think of the community as well. That if we are manufacturing this, Where are we disposing our waste? Are we disposing our waste at the river where the cows, for farmers, for community, where they drink, or the water where also the community that our business is situated in, they use that river to bath, to cook. So we are exposing them, we are killing them. Residual risk is it's the risk that remains after taking into account the effect of the effort that had been installed. This one is explaining itself. Significant risk. It is a level of a risk that cannot or will not be tolerated by management or and the workforce. It needs to be controlled or eliminated. So the significant risk is something major. For example, you see on the farms, usually now they build houses for they build houses for their livestock, because during the rain they will not rain, during the frost they will not be frost bited. So this is something that they cannot tolerate, and we must fix it or eliminate it as soon as possible. We have a tolerable risk. It's a level of risk that will be tolerated by the management or and the workforce. So it's something that we can tolerate. Now, let us jump and come to hazards and the risk. So we are familiar with the definition of hazards, of risk. So we know that now we know wherever there is a hazard, there is also a risk. So this is what they were trying to teach us here. So what does this thing says? It says from if it says here the above from the above, it is clear that if two or more hazards they interact with each other, there is certainty risk exist. So if we have two hazards, let's say we are the contractors who are fixing electricity. Now it is raining. The rain is in what it falls under environmental hazards, and then we are fixing the electricity. So you know that there is a risk, because if the water get in contact with the cables, someone will be electrified here. Someone will be shocked. So they are trying to teach us that sometimes it has to be two risks involved, so that the two hazards involved, so that there is a harm. Now we have types of hazards and associated risk. Okay, we have the physical hazards. It's the noise. So we in this table you have to identify if the noise it is high or low. It is a high hazard. It is a risk that can the management tolerate this kind of noise, or they cannot. If they cannot, then they take the control measures on what to do. So even on chemical hazards, we will try and figure out what risk does this chemical pose. So what is supposed to be happen? On biological hazards, bacteria, viruses, fungus, parasites, you know what must be done to make sure that those hazards they pose no risk to someone else. So all those types of risk. Okay, let's talk about the risk assessment. Why it is important to assess the risk. Why it is important to make sure that the risks are assessed, so that we can, okay, we make sure that we assess them, so that we know that, oh no, this one, for example, we will all not be using chairs when we are washing the windows if someone has ever been reported to die from falling on the chair. So we are still using it because so we're still using it because of this. We are still because no one has ever. So it is a low risk that that thing can land someone to hospital. They can only need the medical, maybe first aid medical. Okay, we have the categories of risk. We have number one, strategic risk. So these risk they can affect the strategic direction and the survival of the organization. This would include, for example, things like microeconomic risk created by fiscal policies of governments or municipalities, as well as the impacts of technology like internet. This will also include risk associated with poor decision making or direction setting by management and extend such things as measures. Okay, guys, have you ever noticed that on clinics we have different types of trash bins? So while we have different types of trash bins, so we make sure that the one with red, where those it's for things with blood. So we make sure that those things they are not contaminated with the usual garbage because someone else is supposed to come and do what and pick them up. So if ever we pick up that they were disposed where they were not supposed to be disposed, so that thing is putting children to risk. Because kids they love playing with syringe. They love that thing, so they will use those things. They will get what the bacteria of which we categorized them under the what the biological hazard. So number two, let's come to business or financial risk. These are the risks that can affect the business in terms of its general financial viability. They include risk associated with the market in which the company operates, as well as the ability to finance growth through loan. So those are the business or financial risk. People in businesses they know about them. Um, so we have many types of risk, of which you may also go through and read them because this book is available for you if you want to read this. So I want to show you something of how do we identify the risk. So remember, everything that you present, it should be something that you are able to make sure that you can, everything that you are presenting, it should be something that you can present in front of your employer. So now we are looking for risk assessment templates. A second. So I'm going to show you how to do the risk assessment template. Yes. So now look at this. Remember this one, it seems much easier and this. So let's just view this one. Remember, whatever that you are, it should be something that you can present in front of your employer. So this is the risk assessment. Now, this is number one, the thing that is shaded in black. It's the probability of that hazard. We'll talk about that hazard now. So let's say we are still talking about the Caesar. Remember, so the Caesar, okay, it's here they used the percentages. to identify the percentage. So if it's 81 to 100%, then it's something that is a very, it's low risk. They shaded with green, but you must make sure that your hazards are always at minimum risk. So the Caesar, like for example, the Caesar. So the Caesar is a minimal, it's a minimum, it causes minimum risk because it is used by the elder person, you see? So you can just put it here and shade it to green. And then when we come to now, the child is using the scissor. Now, where do I put this scissor? A child is using. So there are high risk that the child might poke their eyes, might hurt might hurt the other child. So when it is high, you make sure that your risk they never reach the yellow. They stay on the green. This is something when you do this, you do something that you can always present to your employer. So you make sure that from red, your risk. I said there's always a risk. So when it is red like this, it is extreme, which means someone can die with the thing if it's there. So what do? We try and eliminate it completely. So if we say it's high risk, it is also we can say it can cause a permanent disability, or you can lose your legs. So if you've lost your legs now, how are you going to work? If we are using the grinder, let's use the grinder for example. So the grinder, we are using it, but we know that they are high risk because we've seen people who are working on forestry that sometimes they do not have enough fingers on their hands because they were cut down by the grinder. So we know that the grinder is something that is very high risk. At least it has never killed someone, but we must make sure we monitor it daily so that there are no loose screws. So you monitor and you wear the correct PPE when you have to work with the grinder because it is a high risk. You can lose even your whole hand. Now, when we come to the moderate risk, so it is something that can also that can only cause you the injury that requires probably the first aid, like when you fall at your home while you are washing the windows, you only have few stretches, something that requires the first aid, and then you be good. So it's something that is moderate. So you must make sure you try by all means to make sure that it stays that way or even lesser. But you should not have high risk at work. So whenever you look at you see red, just think of the risk. Remember, even if we are going on the traffic light, if you see red, you do not pass when the traffic light is red because why? It is the high risk. So the car might hit you because it is going on full speed now. Even we've noticed that our firefighting equipment are also red. So that means it's things that we should not not play with. So it's something that we should not play with. When something is red, it means it is something. Also, according to Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 26, yes, people should not play with the things that are meant to help them in terms of their health and safety. The equipment for firefighting, the equipment for first aid, we do not play with all those things. Okay, so that is how, whenever you are doing your risk assessment, guys, you do something that you will be able to present to your employer. You do something that will be easier for you to remember. You can use even the animals here. You can put we know the dangerous animals. You can put the lion here. You can put the jaguar. You can put all those dangerous species that they are high risk. So you will remember during your presentation that whenever there is a lion, that thing is a high risk. We need to highlight it. Then here you can put a dog because a dog might or might not hurt somebody. And then in terms of low risk, you can even here you can put a chicken because what is the chicken going to do to me? And then here on minimum risk, you can even put the snail because the snail, the snail, guys. I do not need to explain why I say the snail, but it is something, or even the fly, because the fly cannot do anything to cause harm. So that is how we do, although that is how we present those things to our employers. So, uh, if you have questions, that was it about our hire. If you have questions, you can feel free to ask me. Remember, I said we have, let me just recap this whole lesson and then you go and do your assignments, guys, because they are now available. Okay, so I said we have we have so many types of hazards. So you should be able to identify that this is a hazard and which class of hazard is this for you to be able to assess for the risk. Now we have so many types of hazards, guys. I said we have physical hazards. Under physical hazards is where you find machinery, equipment, the cuts that are caused by equipment and the machinery. We have the falls, slips, trips from heights or from just on the floor because the floor was wet. So we should be able to know that that is a physical hazard. Someone leaving the floor wet is going to cause there is a hazard and it is classified under physical hazards. And then in terms of noise, because in the long run we will be having hearing loss. And then the temperature extremes, if you go to Scotland, it's very cold, so you might die of frost because your body is not used to that cold, and you are not able to adjust to that type of cold. So it's the things that we should always, even if you are looking for a job, you should look at the temperature. Am I going to survive working on this temperature, or I'm just wasting my time because I'm sending myself to death? So we assess the risk. So if you're going to work in a frost for a year, you can die because you are not born there. Your body is not immune to handle the frost, to handle the ice. Okay, and then we have the chemical hazards. So under chemical hazards, we said anything chemical. We mentioned petrol, oil, uh, explosions, though all those substances that are harmful chemicals. Now, how do we determine that these chemicals are harmful? Sometimes it's those chemicals that can also be a source of fire. So the chemicals are very dangerous because they can start fire, or even if someone is spilling the acid on your face, what is going to happen on your face? The thing is going to damage your face. Now, that are chemical hazards, and then we talked about biological hazards, where we mentioned the infections, the HIV and AIDS, the COVID-19, the tuberculosis, all the allergies, all those things. So they fall under biological hazards. And then we said we have economic hazards. I mentioned that people who are working as truck drivers, bus drivers, because they are doing one thing, even people who are working at the office, they also from time to time need to take walks to rest their back because it is strenuous to stay in the chair for more than I cannot stay in this chair for 5 hours. So I have to take walks from time to time. And then we said we also had the psychological hazards. And I told you, whenever we speak of psychological, just think of the stress. Just think of the stress, just think of the violence at work, the aggression, because most of the people who are going around collecting papers who are mad, who are crazy, they are very aggressive, they're very violent. So it starts there. When you notice a behavior on someone who is violent, just know, hi, Imambili hazard. Now we come to we also talk about the harassment. It might be a sexual harassment, or you are harassed because of your skin color of the race. It happens that it happens a lot of time. And then we come to the environmental hazards. So in the environmental hazards are the hazards that we cannot control, sometimes the weather condition. So it's things that we can never control, but we can prepare for them. And then we say to manage those hazards, first you have to identify them, and then you assess their risk according to each other, and then you use the control measures. In the control measures, I said if you are able to eliminate something completely, you eliminate it. If you can substitute with something better, you substitute it. If you cannot, we use engineering controls. If they are also failing, we use administrative controls. And then the last but not least, it is always the last, it's the PPE. You issue out the PPE. And then after you've done implementing those control measures, you sit down and then you monitor if those all your controls are working with the way they are supposed to work. So this was it for today. Unfortunately, I'm the only presenter today because this is such a short and sweet course. So tomorrow we will meet again, same time, same place. For it's what are we learning tomorrow? So we are learning on how to investigate the accident. So for the Shrep group, the assignments are opened. Please make sure that we write our assignments today. Also, they will be open for this lesson for today. So make sure you write your assessments. We have been experiencing a high volume of people who are on our LMS, but make sure that you keep on checking to make sure that we are all able to write our assessment today. So thank you so much, guys. We will see you tomorrow.